Ya Yazdan! Satayash kunam izade pakra ke guya obina kunad khakra bamuri dehad maleshe narahshir kunad par shahbar pile jange dalir jhangra bulandio pastitoi nadanam toi harache hasti toi. These are the opening lines of the Shahnameh in praise of Almighty Yazdan, written by Firdausi. The meaning is, I offer my prayers to the pure worshipful one who bestowed speech and sight to a lump of clay, who makes the ferocious tiger helpless before an ant, and who gives victory to a mosquito over an elephant. The loftiest and the minutest in the world is because of thee. I do not claim to understand thee, but I can say that the existence of everything is through thee and thee alone. It was an age of uncertainties and despair. Shah had died, and Iran was throneless. Zaal was very old, and Iran was leaderless. Taking advantage, the Turanians under the leadership of Afrasiab crossed the border of Iran, across the Oxus River, and attacked the border towns and villages. The villagers were killed, the villages burnt or destroyed. With despair and panic, they ran to old Zaal to plead for his help. A few weeks back, Iran was in mourning as the king, Shah had died without naming a successor. Just then, hope and light dawns with the advent of Kay Kobad, the first Kayanian king of Iran, and the advent of mighty Rostam on the scene. The epic Shahnameh declares a turning point in the history of Iran at this time, during which occurs the emergence of Shah Kay Kobad and the mighty Hero Pahliv, Rostam, son of Zaal, on the scene. It was the worst of an era when Iran was without a king. It was the best of an era when Shah Kay Kobad appeared on the scene. It was an age of uncertainty, then approached an age of wisdom. It was an epoch of dubiousness, when approached the epoch of belief and faith. It was a season of darkness, when dawned the season of light. It was a winter of despair, when came the spring of hope. In the age of adversity, true heroes emerge, says Firdausi. The only time evil triumphs is when good men do nothing. This epic story from the Shahnameh is at a time when, after the last Peshdadian king of Iran, Shah who died suddenly, there appeared the first Kayanian king, Shah Kay Kobad, which would change the history of Iran forever and mark the beginning of a new dynasty, the Kayanian dynasty, which could be called the golden period of ancient Iranian civilization. This was also the beginning of a new mighty hero emerging in Iran, the legendary Tehemtan Rostam, son of Zaal, who appears on the scene as a champion hero of Iran and creates history with his unbelievable feats of strength, courage, grit and resilience. After the demise of Padshah, there was no person at the time who possessed the Farah Yazadi, or Lord's glory, of sufficient glory to ascend the exalted throne of Iran. This Farah, or glory, was later called Kayani Khore. The word Kayan means kingly, royal and regal. The dynasty got its name from the Avesta title Kavi of the first king Kobad of this dynasty. This was a dangerous situation, since the lack of a king would embolden the enemies of Iran like Turan to strike at her defense at this moment of leadership vacuum and indecisiveness. Now the tidings spread into Turan, and Shah departed, and a Poshang, who was of the race of Tur, the Turanian king, heard the news thereof with gladness, for he deemed that the time was ripe to remember the vengeance that was due unto the blood of his sire. Therefore he called upon his warriors and bade them to go to war against Iran, saying, the time was come to avenge his father and draw upon himself the heritage. And while his son Afrasiab made ready the host to fulfill the desire of his father, there spread the news that Sam the Pahliv had been gathered into dust, and that Zaal was old and was ready to die. And the news gave courage unto Afrasiab and his men, and they made haste to gain the frontier. Afrasiab hurried with his large army into the land of Iran, that there he might place himself upon the seat of power after conquering Iran. And all the men of Iran, when they learned thereof, were sorely afraid, and they turned once again unto Zaal, son of Sam. And Zaal spoke to the congregation of courtiers, warriors, and public, saying thus, I have done for you what was fitting and right all my life, and I have feared no enemy save my old age and Yazdan. Now that the Turanian enemy is upon us, and I am quite old, therefore I charge you that you look upon my son Rostam to deliver you. Although he is yet a young boy, I shall command him to take up arms against the enemy. Then he called before him his son Rostam, who was yet of tender age, and he said unto him, O my son, thy lips still smell of milk, and thy heart should not go out to pleasure. But the days are grave, and Iran looks unto thee in danger. I must send thee forth to cope with the heroes, for my desires are not after the feast, neither do I covet sleep or rest. My heart is fixed upon valour. A horse do I crave, and a saddle, a coat of mail, and a helmet. And my delight is in the arrow. Thine enemies will I vanquish, and may my courage be like unto thine. Then Rostam addressed Sam and said, O great Pahliv, I rejoice in that I am sprung from thee. You know, my father, that my desires are rather after war than pleasures. Give unto me therefore a steed of strength and a mace of Sam thy father, and suffer that I go out to meet the hosts of Ahriman from Turan. Then Zaal's heart laughed within him when he heard these words of manhood, and he commanded that all the flocks of horses both from Zabulistan and Kabul be brought before his son, that he might choose from their midst that steed of battle. And they were passed in order before Rostam, and he laid upon the backs of each horse his hand of might to test them if they could bear his weight and valor. And the horses shuddered as they bent beneath his grasp and sank upon their haunches in weakness. And thus did he do with them all in turn until he came upon a flock of horses from Kabul. Then he perceived in their midst a mighty mare, strong, and there followed after her colt, like its mother, with a chest of lion and the shoulders of an elephant. And in strength it seemed like an elephant, and in color it was rose leaves that have been scattered upon the saffron ground. Now Rostam, when he had tested this colt with his eyes and with his hand, made a running knot in his cord and threw it about the beast. And he caught the colt in the snare, though the mare defended it mightily. Rostam, after subjugating his giant horse, which was fit for his mighty frame, Rostam asked the herder of horses, What is the price of this mighty horse? The herder replied, You are surely Rostam, because only you can ride Raksh. So ride this mighty horse, whose name is Raksh, which means lightning, and make the Iranian homeland free from invaders. For none other than Rostam could tame this mighty horse. The whole nation of Iran is his price, for Raksh is priceless. Mount under Raksh, O Rostam, and make the whole world free from tyrants and establish righteousness in Iran. Rostam smiled and gratefully said, Establishing righteousness is in the hands of Almighty Yazdan. But I will get victory over the invaders with the help of Yazdan, my mighty arm, and this mighty steed Raksh. Rostam then mounted on Raksh and reached Zabol, his home in Sistan. Now Zaal and the Iranians consulted wise Dasturs, the Magi's of the land, and the mystic bird Simorg, saying that without a king, Iran is at a disadvantage. Therefore, we must find the king soon, because Afrasiab the Turanian has entered Iran with a huge army. The wise Dasturs and Simorg offered advice to Zaal and Rostam that would change the history of Iran forever and mark the beginning of a new dynasty, which could be called the golden period of ancient Iranian civilization, the Kayanian dynasty. These wise men and the wise Simorg had seen a young man with a kingly glory, the Kayani Kore, on the foot of the Alborz mountains in a vision. They directed Zaal to send Rostam to this young man with a Kayani Kore and crown him king of Iran, so that Iran will get a leader to defeat this menace of Turanian hordes that have plagued our land. Now Zaal explained his words of wisdom to Rostam and detailed his mission. Not only was it difficult and dangerous, but it was also needed to be executed within a very short time, since the enemy was at the gates. Rostam gladly accepted his mission and said thus to Zaal, "Fikr nahi jo ladai thashe bahu sakt, Khuda maro yaar to firuz maru bakt, ladai nu pehrish jare bakhtar, zamano dhruj she tyare thar thar." The great warriors are the ones who fight for justice and freedom, said Firdausi. Zaal then sent Rostam with his mighty Raksh and a few Pahlwans to the Elburz mountain to find this very able contender to the throne of Iran, who is known by them to stay in Elburz, the descendant of Shah Faridun. And he was the most able ruler of Iran, whose name was Kay Kobad. The wise ones revealed the future to Zaal and explained that a new dynasty was set to take the reins of power in Iran. These Kayani kings would ensure the safety and prosperity of Iran in the future and would prepare for the advent of the Prophet of Prophets, Ashospitam Zarathustra, who would descend in a few hundred years' time. The task of finding the firstborn of this dynasty, called Kay Kobad, and escorting him to Iran under these trying circumstances was given to Rostam. Since Rostam's entire life and career would be intertwined with the lineage of these kings, declared the future reading Magi's Dasturs. Then Zaal commanded Rostam to go to Elburz, bring the able King Kobad to Iran within a week for crowning him Shah of Iran. You will find him by asking around for his name, Kay Kobad. Rostam, along with a few soldiers, quickly started on the route to Mount Elburz. But the ears of the spies of Turan were everywhere, and soon Afrasiab got the news that a new person with a Farah Yazidi had been found, and a young lad called Rostam has been dispatched to Mount Elburz to escort this young lad back to Iran and anoint him the king of Iran. Afrasiab sent out scouts all the way to the Elburz mountain and stopped this young lad in his tracks. After all, what kind of fight would a young man barely out of his teens put up? On the other side, Rostam rode Raksh like the wind, his sensory perceptions guided by the divine trinity, the Dami Upanam, the Shahrevaram Shaspand, and the Behram Yazad. And he rode, he realized that there were Turanian soldiers everywhere blocking his path. Without any warning, Rostam attacked the spies with his war cry, Ya Yazdan. And the few soldiers of Turan who were trying to block the route to Elburz were shocked to find this young man alone charging at them. Rostam single-handedly routed them all, and many were killed. Wherever they went, rivers of blood flowed. Finally, the soldiers of Afrasiab accepted defeat and ran back to their leader and explained what had happened. Ya Yazdan! Ya Yazdan! Ya Yazdan was a terrifying war cry of Rostam, which was so unnerving to the enemy that by his mere presence and his blood-curdling war cry would be enough to cause panic and they would just run away from the battlefield. Afrasiab got alarmed after hearing about the routing of his contingent and immediately summoned a veteran warrior called Kalun and entrusted him with the mission of going to Elburz with a large army of soldiers and finishing off this young lad and also the to-be-appointed new king, so that all the troubles of Afrasiab would get over. Kalun quickly gathered a legion of men and riding fast with the surviving scouts in front, soon reached the foothills of Elburz and began to plan a trap for the Iranian party who would soon be returning with Kay Kobad. Meanwhile, Rostam began the ascent towards Mount Elburz. About 1 mile from the mountain, Rostam entered a flat plain, a tree-laden maidan with colorful flowering plants. On the central plain were large tents. It was lush green all around, and the scent of musk and roses pervaded everywhere. There in the center of the ring of tents was placed a throne of pure gold in the open, on which was seated a young man of amazing radiance on his face. Around him stood wise old men with cummerbunds, conversing softly with him. As the group saw Rostam galloping and approaching them, they bade him welcome and asked him to join the majlis as their guest as per Iranian protocol and partake the food and wine with them. Rostam dismounted and accepted their invitation, at the same time explaining that he would not be able to join them for long since his father had entrusted him with a mission of critical importance. The wise men and the youngster asked Rostam as to who or what he was looking for at the Elburz mountain. Since they were residents of the same area, maybe they could help him find this. Rostam replied, ever since the death of Shah Kay Kobad, there was no king in Iran. This was leading to disorder and suffering, and Turanian invaders have entered Iran, taking advantage of the empty throne and the leaderless Iran. I have been told by wise Dasturs that on the slopes of Mount Elburz resides a young man named Kay Kobad of the lineage of Faridun, who will become the next king of Iran. Hence I was looking for Kay Kobad. Therefore, you are requested to please inform me the whereabouts of Kay Kobad if you have any information. Then the radiant young man smiled and replied, I am Kay Kobad. Then Rostam immediately touched the ground near the feet of Kay Kobad and requested him to immediately come with him for the return journey to Iran. Kay Kobad said, I had a dream recently when a large eagle comes and puts the crown of Iran on my head. I now know that you are Rostam, that large white eagle. As soon as Rostam and his entourage descended Elburz mountains with Kay Kobad, they found themselves surrounded by a large contingent of Turanian army, led by Kalun. Kay Kobad offered to fight the Turanian army with Rostam, but Rostam said, these Turanians do not have the strength to face Rostam, my mighty Gors and Raksh, which are alone sufficient to ground them to dust. And soon the battle raged hot and strong. Deeds of valor were done on either side, but the men of Turan could not stand against the mighty strength of Rostam, for he put forth the power of a lion and his reputation extended for miles. Rostam fell upon the Turanians, slaughtering them here and there. So mighty were Rostam's blows that Firdausi's graphic description is very apt here. Yakira gerefti zadi bar digar, zebini farurikti malgs esar. That is, he would pick up one and smash him against the other with such force that their brains would get crushed and ooze out from their nose. From that day, men named him Tehemtan Rostam, meaning the strongest limbed Rostam, for he performed deeds of unbelievable prowess. Rostam destroyed the entire Turanian contingent to dust with his mighty arm, his valor, and his mighty Gors. Then Kulun, seeing that disaster, lifted his spear and rode towards Rostam. But Rostam snatched the spear from his hand and pierced him with the same spear and lifted him off his horse with the spear, killing him instantly. Firdausi writes here, Kalun Gashchun Morgbar Bab Zan. That is, like a chicken mounted on a barbecue rod, Kalun was affixed to the spear. Seeing the state of Kalun, the few remaining soldiers fled from the scene, leaving Kalun's body affixed on the spear. The Turanian army just turned tail and ran away scared to Turan to tell Afrasiab of this disaster. Centuries will pass and legends will fade, empires will vanish and kings farewell bade, but the legend of mighty Rostam will be remembered always, and people of all ages will sing his praise, recounting his valour through endless days. When Rostam and the Iranians beheld that the few remaining Turanian foes had vanished, he turned into Kay Kobad and did homage unto him before his throne. Rostam then took Kay Kobad to Zaal and other Iranian Pahlwans to Sistan. There, Zaal and Rostam, together with the nobles of Sistan, went to the capital of Iran, and the noble elders, the Dasturs and the otherwise magi priests of Iran arranged the coronation of Shah Kay Kobad and made him sit on the traditional holy throne of Iran with much pomp, as is the manner of kings, and crowned him Shah, saying, Long live Shah Kay Kobad, and celebrated their victory over Turanians. Here Firdausi says, True strength lies not in physical power, but in character, resilience, and valor. Kay Kobad then placed Zaal upon his right hand and Rostam upon his left hand, and all Iranians feasted and made merry with food and wine. The next day, a proclamation rang out in the court of the king, and Shah Kay Kobad said, Manadiba Ramad ze bargahe Shah, ke ay pahlwanan Iran se paha, kunhun gahe razmastkin avrid, bator khane ta sarakaksh, kamin avrid. That is, O Pahlwan of Iran, the time of war is on us. Let us rush into battle and mount an attack on the Turanians. Then immediately Kay Kobad summoned the nobles and warriors of Iran to his court and laid out his plans to drive the Turanians out of the Iranian territory. Kay Kobad realized that lasting peace could only be established if the Turanians were driven out of the Iranian territory and taught such a hard lesson that they would not dare to attack Iran again. Kay Kobad therefore made preparations for battle. Rostam made the demand that he be allowed to fight single-handedly with Afrasiab. Even though his father Zaal knew the divine powers behind Rostam, still he was a bit hesitant to send his son out to battle with Afrasiab. During this dialogue between Zaal and Rostam, Firdausi writes a memorable couplet which not only shows his poetic genius but also delivers in a frightening manner the extent of the evil power of Afrasiab. Zaal cautions Rostam thus, Shabad ud kuhe ahan chu daryayab agar bishawad naam Afrasiab. That is, if a mountain of iron were to just hear the name of Afrasiab, it would turn into a sea of water. Despite these warnings, Rostam is adamant and finally has his way of fighting with Afrasiab alone, single-handedly. The entire Iranian army led by Kay Kobad and Rostam marched towards the Turanian army. As soon as the two armies meet in an open battlefield, Rostam asks Zaal to show him who Afrasiab is, and Zaal identifies him to Rostam, saying that is Afrasiab. Now when the armies met, Rostam came forward and demanded a battle with Afrasiab. Seeing the very young Rostam for the first time and unaware of his God-given mighty power, Afrasiab scorned him and rushed into battle, hoping to finish him off with an encounter in a few minutes. All the anger that Rostam had contained in him for such a long time against Afrasiab exploded, and he came down on Afrasiab like a ton of bricks. The mighty Temten Rostam, entering the battle with his mighty battle roar, said, Ya Yazdan! And Rostam mounted on the mighty Raksh of lightning agility and rushed towards Afrasiab. All the anger that Rostam had contained in him for such a long time against Afrasiab exploded. As the seasoned warrior with decades of battle experience, Afrasiab immediately realized that this was no ordinary warrior who broke his soldiers' cordon and came single-handedly to fight him. Fighting fiercely, Rostam rushed forward and taking Raksh very close to Afrasiab, caught hold of his belt and with a mighty roar lifted Afrasiab off his mount with one hand and went towards the Iranian army and Shah Kay Kobad, taking Afrasiab hanging above in the air. Rostam's intention was to take Afrasiab prisoner and throw him in front of Shah Kay Kobad. But the wily Afrasiab opened his waist belt and thus fell to the ground and escaped from Rostam's grasp and ran away scared and in panic. But he had to leave behind his crown in Rostam's hand. The moment the Turanians saw that Afrasiab had fallen down, they collected a swift horse and came in a group and surrounded Afrasiab, and the scared Afrasiab sat on the swift horse and ran away to save his life from Rostam. With one hand holding the crown and the other with his gurs, Rostam single-handedly demolished the hordes of the Turanian warriors and managed to ride back to his camp with the crown, but was angry that Afrasiab had slipped away from his grasp. Through battles fierce and challenges dire, Rostam's courage ignited with wildfire. With gurs in hand and heart so true, he conquered foes and skies so blue. From mountain tops to valleys wide, his legacy will eternally abide. In tales of old, his name will shine, a hero unmatched of strength divine. So let the centuries come and go, for Rostam's story will forever grow. In hearts of minds his spirit stays, a beacon of bravery through time's endless maze. A distraught and scared Afrasiab went back to Turan and complained to his father King Pasang that despite their best efforts every now and then, these Iranians managed to come up with the bravest of warriors. This new boy called Rostam would surely spell trouble for the Turanians in future. Little did Afrasiab know how true his words were going to be. Afrasiab suggested to his father King Pasang that they should call for a truce, otherwise Rostam will come here and destroy our country. Afrasiab said to his father, "O king, thou didst evil to provoke this war. Turan, which Faridun the Great did give to Tur the Valiant, has been handed over unto thee. There has arisen a mighty warrior called Rostam of the race of Sam, and none can withstand against him. He has broken the power of your entire army, and the world hath not seen a warrior like him. He is little more than an elephant and a lion combined. Ponder therefore, O king, before this young Rostam, my power fades like unto the mists that rise above the hills. Why therefore did you seek to enlarge your border? Verily I say, make peace with Iran immediately. Otherwise Kay Kobad and his army with mighty Rostam at its head will subdue us, and by our own act we shall lose our land too. The greatest of conflicts are the ones fought within oneself, says Firdausi. Now Pasang wrote a very apologetic letter to Kay Kobad saying, in the name of Almighty Ormuz, let bygones be bygones, and why we should fight over something that has happened years ago. It was my mistake to overrun your land. If then Kay Kobad will listen unto my prayer, let the Jihun, that is the Oxus, be the boundary between us as before, and none of my people shall cross its waters again. King Pasang put his seal upon the letter and sent it to Kay Kobad, and the messenger bore with him rich gifts of jewels and good steed. And then Kay Kobad read the letter. He smiled and told the messenger, go and tell King Pasang that verily my people did not seek out this war, but Afrasiab and your army, who deemed that he could wrest unto himself the crown of Iran and could subdue the masterless land unto his will, that caused this skirmish. And that Pasang had also followed in the footsteps of Tur his father. For just as Tur robbed the throne of Iraj, so did Afrasiab take it from Naudar the Shah. And I say to you that I need not make peace with you because of any fear, but I will agree to peace in your terms, because war is not pleasing unto me too. Go tell this to your king, and bring his signed letter of submission to me, and I will stop this war." Kay Kobad himself was eager for the fighting to end, so that peace and prosperity could once again reign in Iran and the years of hardship be over. Hence he accepted the truce offer, making sure that every inch of Iranian land was returned to them, and the Turanians went back to the old borders across the Jihun river. Kay Kobad then ushered in a righteous and just rule throughout Iran, with the grace of Yazdan and the lack of fighting made the people prosperous, happy, contented, and the golden Kayanian era of Iran began. Firdausi says, To Indra darugho farasang madan, Bayaksan raveshdar zamanah madan. Do not consider these tales as falsehoods and fabrications. Remember that times keep on changing, but history remains forever. The legend of Rostam will endure till eternity. The world will remember him with amazement and humility. The Shahnameh of Firdausi is one of the world's longest epic poems created by a single author, much longer than Homer's Iliad and Odyssey combined. It conveys the past of the Iranian empires, starting from the creation of the world. The Shahnameh teaches a wide variety of moral values like worship of one God, religious uprightness, patriotism, love for wife, family and children, and helping the poor, standing up for truth, keeping promises always, showing humility, etc. Firdausi says, the beauty of life lies in the journey, not in the destination. When words become difficult to articulate, seek refuge in none other than the pure Yazdan. For whoever turns away from the just one loses their place and wisdom. I am deathless, I am the eternal master, for I have spread the seed of the world, said Firdausi. Here Firdausi boldly declares that he will live forever through his work in the Shahnameh, which has been credited with preserving the Persian language, ancient Iranian literature and culture, and is the national epic of Iran, consistently included among the greatest works in the world literature. Marzbans, or lords of Sistan, Sam, his son Zaal, and Zaal's son Rostam figure prominently in these epic Shahnameh. Sam is unconditionally loyal to his kings. Zaal is faithful too, but he warns his monarchs against bad advice and evil actions. Rostam is loyal to wise and just kings, but challenges the inept Kaikous and the tyrannical Kaygoshtas. The legendary section of the Shahnameh is dominated by mighty Tempt and Rostam, the most celebrated Iranian champion of Persian folklore, whose exploits draw on narratives going back to the very ancient times. The homes that are dwellings today will sink under shower and sunshine to decay, but the lofty palace of Shahnameh I created will never be destroyed by storm or rain, said Firdausi. Considering the vast period that the Shahnameh embraces and the delicacy of its style, it is hardly equaled and certainly not surpassed by any other epic, and for this reason Firdausi is regarded, and rightly so, as the Homer of the East.